Hello, my name is Arthur, and in this video we're going to model up this toy vehicle for my next Godot project. So let's just select everything and get rid of it. And we'll start from scratch here. So I'm going to be in a side view. We'll need to get the cursor back to where it belongs. So cursor to world origin, and we're going to start right at the beginning as though nobody's seen any of my videos. So I'm going to go into GIMP, Control New, create an image, 256 by 256, and make my UV image. So we'll select some colors. We'll pick a couple of greens. So a light green and a dark green. We won't worry about the saturation of them. We'll just get a couple of colors here. So something like that will work. Edit. We'll fill with the background color, and I've selected a brush. It's this brush in the palettes. We'll scale that up a little bit and rotate it to something like a 45-50 degree angle. That squares that brush out. Force, we'll dial that back a little bit and see if that covers the whole canvas. We'll bring the size up a little bit more. And I'll just put one brush stroke on there. See how that looks. Maybe the force should be a little bit higher on that. Get those edges to firm up a little bit. We'll just come and dab those edges a little bit. And that should be okay. We don't need anything great here. So we're going to dial back the saturation on that. Maybe darken it a little bit. I'll bring back the brightness a little bit. That looks okay like that. And throw a little bit of noise on that. So HSV noise, okay. And that should be okay. It's a bit small, but it should be okay. So we'll export that. I have a folder on the desktop for this project. I'll call it green camo. And of course we're always able to go back and make that image nicer if we want a much nicer image than that, because that's not much of an image. But I think it'll work out okay. So we're going to start off, we're going to add in a circle. F9, 1 meter, 16 vertices, and rotate it 90 degrees on the y-axis. Tab into edit mode. Come back a little bit so we can see. I'll extrude and scale. Scale that up. Shift A, add in a plane, F9 to get its dialog. Rotate it 90 degrees on Y and scale that up a little bit. P to separate that selection. A to select all. Mesh, knife project. Then up here we'll just hide circle 01, 001, that's the plane. Come into faces so that our selection will hold. Control I to invert the selection, X to delete the faces. Then we'll go into vertices. We'll select this and these two with the circle. X, delete vertices. We'll circle select these two vertices, scale Z0. We'll select all of it, shift duplicate, rotate Z 180, drop that. use the move tool, and we'll move that somewhere around there, and this one somewhere around here. Sometimes the top row will have duplicate vertices and they need to be merged. But usually when I leave the plane centered, that doesn't happen. So we're going to assume there's no duplicate vertices there and just go carry on. So we'll select this, give it a face, this, and give it a face. We'll select all of this and extrude it. Just drop that so we can use the move tool. Pull it up something like that. We're going to loop cut down the middle. Get the move tool back. Move this one back a little bit. We'll round off the front end a small amount. So we'll pull that down. Deselect. Reselect this. Deselecting helps to not accidentally hit that move tool and have to undo and redo. Then we'll cut this back end. So we'll select these two. F to create the edge. P to separate that selection. We'll select all of this. And again, we'll knife project. We can hide circle 002. That's just the edge that we just separated. Come back into vertices. Select these four. X, delete vertices, and that's got us pretty well underway. 7 with everything selected. We'll pull these over to the positive X side of things, somewhere around there. I always just guess they turn out different every time. Extrude and drop it with a right click. We want to be in global. And we'll change the X value from a positive to a negative. That will pull that side over. We can have a look at that. That's about right. It may be a little bit slim, but that's okay. We're just going to go with it. Select all, mesh, normals, recalculate outside. The outside has to be recalculated when you make your shape like this, because some faces will be inverted the wrong way. So now we're going to go into X-ray so we can select or deselect through the whole vehicle. We'll deselect all of the inside. We'll go into edges and go to a more top view. So we can circle deselect. The edges we don't want selected here, and I got a couple of that I didn't intend to. So let's look at that in solid so we can see the selection easier. So basically what I have selected is the outside edge of the top, front and back, but none of the bottom or inside edges. So that's what the selection looks like. And what we're going to do with that is we're going to add a bevel. Now that bevel tool looks odd. It would usually be pointing up. That tells me something is probably wrong. Okay, this edge is not supposed to be selected. So just the top edges and the front and back edges. So we'll pull a bevel into that. Doesn't need to be big. That might even be a little bit bigger than it should be. Then we can put smooth faces onto that. And that all looks good. So with no X-ray on, we'll go into faces. Oh, no, we still need edges, or vertices, I should say. And X-ray. We need to do the bottom still. So a side view, number 3. We'll deselect and select the bottom edge. So we'll select this whole bottom edge. We'll come into edges again to deselect the edges we don't want, which are all of the inside edges. So we'll deselect all of the inside edges. That will have the entire bottom edge of the vehicle selected like that. And we'll pull a small bevel into that. And that one just needs to be small. Now we can turn off X-ray and go into faces and look at the bottom of this. So we're going to circle select. The entire bottom, excluding the bevel edges. Mesh, split, selection. And let's get into some materials here. Now I've made 3 materials. These aren't actually supposed to be here. Let's get rid of those because those came from the original, and maybe some people will want to see how to do this. So when you're cleaning up your blend file and you want to get rid of materials, you select Blender File, Materials, and we can select all of these and delete them. So now we have no materials at all in this blend file. Then View Layer is the one that you started in. So that way we'll be starting from fresh with no materials at all. Usually there'd be one material and that's it right there. So we'll call this one Chassis. The entire vehicle is going to take on this color, but that's okay. So we'll assign that. Control Invert. We'll create a new material. This one we'll call Body. And we'll create one more material we'll call Glass. And for that material, let's shift it into the blue a little bit. And we can assign that to everything on the top for now. So the next thing we're going to do is do a loop cut with 2 cuts up the center of the vehicle. So we'll go like that. And we'll just leave it where it is. We could scale it out, but I think we'll leave it. We'll look at that later when we get to it. We'll go into Vertices, X-ray, number 3 for a side view. We'll get the Move tool. We want to level out these 3 for when we make the windows, because the windows here should be pretty much square. So we're going to go Scale Z0. That's going to pull this bevel out of shape. So we'll just pull that down to get that bevel roughly in shape again, so it doesn't look peculiar. And that will work out okay like that. In Faces, we'll turn off X-ray. Now we'll look at the hood ornament here. And let's see, we're in medium point, so can look at that from the top. I think we could afford to scale this up a little bit bigger and see what we get out of that, if that throws us out of whack a bunch. Well, it went around that curve okay, so I'm going to call that okay. I'm going to extrude it in. Just a little bit. Doesn't need to be far in. Mesh, I'm going to split that selection. And then because it makes it easier to do the next move, we're going to scale it using the control key. So we're going to scale it down so it goes one click. And that's going to make the loop cutting go easier. So let's try 3 on this loop cut and see what that gets us. That looks okay. So now we can come back, L to select the whole thing, scale, the control key, and pull it out that one click. And I'm going to back out of that because I'm too close to the center and that causes scaling to be titchy. So we'll scale from a little further from the origin of that. Or its median. So we'll scale it up the one click, go into faces, select every second face on this, extrude, and pull that down. And that's okay like that. That leaves us some holes, but that's okay. They'll be okay. And I'm going to assign that the chassis material. Whoops. Let's undo that. So we'll go into object mode and minus that off. First we'll control plus. That will get us the upper edges. Oh, some of that just has the chassis material. It's not actually empty there. It just has the chassis material already. So we'll assign that dark material to that, and that'll be good. We'll do the front window here. I to inset. We'll inset. E to extrude, and we'll just push that in a little bit. We'll do the side windows. This time we'll use the inset tool. So we can select individual faces, and that will get us the windows properly. So we'll inset that. And these windows are not supposed to be huge, so that's about right there. Now we'll extrude scale X 0.98, and that works for that. We can select up the last of the windows at this point. Select the chassis material and select that. Control I, invert that selection. Select the body material and assign it to the new selection, which is just the body of the vehicle. And we can come into UV editing. We can just UV unwrap the vehicle like that. That'll work fine. And we'll load in the image texture to the base color of that. So we'll open. We're inside the file with the green camouflage, and that gets that all onto there. And that's our vehicle pretty much done. We'll probably need to come back and redo that wrap again because there is one issue on the front end that we need to fix up. So we'll go into vertices, X-ray, side view. This nose is way too long. I deliberately make it long so that the bevel works. Otherwise the bevel would screw up and just not work properly. So we're going to pull this in a bunch, and basically I'm going to overlap these two vertices with these two. So I'm going to pull it in right so it's almost overlapping and then merge those. So we'll pull that right in like that. We'll select this part of the nose and pull that right in a bunch like that. Then we'll turn off X-ray so we can safely merge these. And there's 6 vertices on each side to merge. So we'll merge at center. We'll select these ones, merge at center, and that should leave 2 for the underneath part here, which is not really much of a chassis, but it's sort of the simplified underside of a toy car, because I don't want to get into trying to do a suspension and all of that. That's more than I'm into. I'm not that good at vehicles. We'll get these ones, merge at center. I don't know if I kept that separate on the other side, but it's not a really big issue. Yeah, there's two separate vertices there. Otherwise this edge would light up. So that's about right there, and now we can add in some tires. So we'll do a tire on this. Let's clean up the project first. This one we can delete because that was just used for knife cutting. This is the edge that we cut that with. We'll delete that. And we'll change the name of circle to vehicle, because this is going to be the unnamed vehicle. And that's one thing to remember when we're using vehicles here. Vehicles are proprietary things. So this is a vehicle. Let's add in a circle. F9. We'll rotate that 90 degrees on Y. And we're in object mode. This is a new object. We're going to make the scale around 0.85. Should be good. And we'll just pull this back. Line this up a bit. And yeah, the wheel wells on this are probably not quite correct, but I'm going to leave them the way they are on vehicle. So we'll change the name of circle to wheel. And let's just disappear the vehicle for now and take our wheel into a top view in X-ray mode so that we're selecting everything we need to. We'll extrude this and pull it over. I'll go about 3 clicks. I'm using the control key. If we need to fatten up the tires, we can do that later. I'll extrude this, do the same thing. I'm looking at this and I'm wondering, almost looks weird there. I guess that's just the origin. So we'll reselect these outside edges. We're going to scale those a little bit, so we'll scale Shift X to limit X so it doesn't get skinnier, it just comes in a little bit. Just to give a little bit of round on the edge of the tire. Right now we can assign one material to this, and we'll add in a second material, which we'll call metal. Let's set that to be just a little bit gray and have some metallic to it. So we'll bring up its metallic, bring down its roughness, and we'll get back to that. So we'll extrude again, scale, Shift, limiting X. Now maybe that much of a tire. Shift D to duplicate. Let's try assigning the metal to that right now. So we'll give that a couple clicks. Hopefully that'll stick. We'll extrude this, scale on X. Oh, that was incorrect. Control Z, Z. Shift duplicate. We duplicate it. Assign the material. And click it a couple of times to be sure. We'll scale this, limiting X, just to get it a little bit bigger. We'll extrude, scale X to pull it out a little bit. Give it some body. And that doesn't look like it has the right material, but right now we're not going to do anything about that. We'll extrude, scale, limiting X, pull that in to get a rim. Extrude scale on X, so just pressing X, not Shift X. We'll pull it in like this. Extrude scale Shift X to limit X, pull it in. From a top view, we can circle deselect the outside. So C and then middle mouse button to deselect. We'll extrude, drop it, merge at center to finish that side. We'll get into a side view, select all of it. From a top view, circle, deselect the inside this time. We'll extrude that, pull out a hub. Extrude, drop, merge at center. Let's just select this whole thing and assign the metallic material to it. We'll come into faces, turn off X-ray, look at it from a side view, and select every second face. We'll extrude that, pull it out, period, individual origins, scale those in to something like that, and assign the chassis material. And that gives us something to see when the wheel rotates. We could look at the wheel from a top view. Select the chassis material. See what we get from that. Okay, that gave us the inside. That's a little unfortunate. Here, let's try like this. We'll select length. I'm just going to leave that inside black because that'll be fine like that. And I'm not paying too much attention to the underside of the vehicle. Let's go into faces. And try to deselect. No, that's not working at all. Okay, let's undo that. We'll look at it from a side view with X-ray and try deselecting this way. Just so we have that outside rim of the tire. And we'll try setting that to smooth. It's not a lot of vertices for smooth faces, but probably come across a little bit better if it's set to smooth. Let's try reselecting that, and let's try shading smooth edges and see if that gets us a little bit more. Now I don't want to subdivide that anymore, so I'm just going to leave that the way that it is. So I'm going into object mode now, bringing back the vehicle. I'm going to pull the wheel out, shift duplicate it, rotate 180 degrees. That's not going to work. Period, median point, rotate 180 degrees. I'll change the X value on that wheel to a minus value. That will give us a wheel on either side. I'll select both of them, come back to this side, Shift D, duplicate those, and pull them forward to the front. And I'm going to call that good enough for the wheels. A little bit odd with no suspension, but I'm going to consider this a toy vehicle, so we'll call that good. Let's look at where our origin is on this. I think that's for the best. It's more or less centered on the vehicle at the bottom, and because I'm going rigid body, I want to make the vehicle difficult to roll because we don't want to see this ugly bottom very much at all. So now we can look at adding in a simple gun. So we'll shift, we'll add in a cube. We'll give it the name gun. we will assign it the chassis material because that's fitting. Let's change the name of wheel to wheel 0.004. That way we have 1 through 4. And that will make the most sense. Okay, we'll come back to cube. We'll bring it up to around where we think the gun should be rotating. And this gun would be very forward on this part where it rotates. So we'll take that into edit mode, scale it down. And maybe that's a little bit low for where it should rotate at. Let's go to a top view, scale on X to skinny it up a bit. And let's look at what we have there. Maybe a little bit small, but I think it'll be okay. Want to make sure that X-ray is turned on. We're going to give it a loop cut. We'll need to set this back to 1. We'll loop cut it somewhere around there. Get the move tool back. Extrude this portion. Extrude it a second time. Reselect the bottom and extrude out the handle on the gun. So something like that will work okay. We'll snap cursor to this selection. We'll shift A, add in a cylinder. F9 to get its dialog. 16 vertices. Rotated on X by 90 degrees. We can dial down the radius and eye that out a little bit. Look at it from a front view by pressing 1 and then 9 to rotate that around and zoom in. Let's just scale that up some and get it as fat as it can be. And then from a side view, we'll just start moving it around so it works a little better for us. So something like that would work. We'll extrude and scale that in a little bit to a barrel. Maybe pull it out, extrude it, drop it, and pull it out. Get that from a side view to see if that's excessive. Something like that'll work. We might want to give a little bit more on the back and a little bit more on the front. We're going to need to move this pivot on it, so we're going to want the gun to pivot at the bottom of the gun like this. So about there will be good. Then if we go into object mode, Shift S, cursor to selected, that will get it right on top of that pivot, and we can add in one last cylinder. And we can scale that on Z to something like that and just pull it down. And P to separate that selection. So we'll just call that gun mount, and that'll be fine like that. It's really just a decoration. It needs to be separate because when the gun comes up, we don't want it to rotate. So that should all work out. I don't know if we should be satisfied with the size of that gun. It's a little bit small. It could be exaggerated a little bit. Made a little bit bigger. Just exaggerate it a little bit. Maybe pull it a little bit back. So let's have a look at the length of the vehicle body. It's 9.53 meters. That's a bit much. So let's select everything, period into median point. In my last tank effort, it was a tiny tank, so it was scaled down to 1 meter. Let's try this one at about 3 meters and see how that works. And that was not where I was going. So we'll scale that down to about 3 meters. And just see how that works with the cameras and stuff. So just another experiment. We'll get a feel for things at different sizes that way. So that looks okay. Yeah, let's pull this way off of the origin. So maybe we should cursor to world origin, and I'm not sure what'll happen if we go selection to cursor. Oh, that's not going to work out. So yeah, in order to get that centered, we'd basically need to start parenting things. So let's parent the gun to the gun mount to the vehicle. We're just picking it up and then pressing down shift, the wheel to the vehicle. So we'll parent all of the wheels to the vehicle. And then we can select the vehicle and snap it to the cursor. And that will get everything centered. So now we'll select everything, object, apply, rotation and scale. And that will take all the rotation and scale values away, so this will be exactly the size it's supposed to be. So that's ready to be exported. In the next video, we'll open a project in Godot, get some folders to organize things a little better than the last project, and export this and get it set up as a rigid body vehicle and see what we can do with that. And until then, I hope this video was helpful, and take care.